The air in the stadium is thick with humidity and the metallic scent of blood. 16,000 fans are on their feet, not just watching a wrestling match, but bearing witness to a sacrifice. In the center of the ring, Carlos Colón, his face a crimson mask, raises a blood-stained fist to the roaring approval of his people. This wasn't just a victory, it was a business transaction. This was the foundation of an empire. For most professional wrestlers, the goal is pretty simple: win championships. Gold belts are the pinnacle of success, physical proof that you're the best in the world. But for one man, in one very specific corner of the globe, championships were merely props. He discovered that in the passionate wrestling culture of Puerto Rico, the real currency wasn't gold, it was blood. And for decades, business was booming. This is the story of Carlos Colón, the patriarch of Puerto Rican wrestling, who understood that violence wasn't just part of the show, it was the entire business model. He took the brutal art of hardcore wrestling and made it the law of the land, building the World Wrestling Council into a cultural phenomenon that dominated an entire island. But empires built on violence often carry a heavy price, and the legacy of Carlos Colón is as complex and scarred as his own legendary forehead. Before he became the father of Puerto Rican wrestling, he was Carlos Edwin Colón González, born in Santa Isabel in 1948. Like many of his generation, he moved to the United States in the 60s, settling in Brooklyn, New York. It was there, far from his island home, that he fell in love with professional wrestling, idolizing guys like Antonino Roca and Miguel Perez. He started his journey not in the spotlight, but in the background, hanging around the gym where his heroes trained, soaking up everything he could, and eventually earning his own shot. He debuted in 1966, an unknown kid from Puerto Rico stepping into the ring in Boston against the formidable Hobo Brazil. For the next several years, Colón was a journeyman, a traveling warrior honing his craft across the vast and grueling North American territory system. He worked in various NWA territories and even spent time in the famously tough Canadian wrestling scene, including Stampede Wrestling. But while he was building a career abroad, he felt the pull of home. He saw a huge void in the Puerto Rican wrestling scene. At the time, wrestling on the island was just a handful of small-time promotions that came and went, often relying on visiting American talent to draw crowds. There was an audience, but there was no real institution. In 1973, Colón made a game-changing decision to return to Puerto Rico, not just as a performer, but as an architect. He partnered with Croatian-born wrestler Victor Jovica, and with Gorilla Monsoon as a key business associate, they formed a new company, Capital Sports Promotions. This wasn't just another small promotion, this was a vision. They landed a vital television deal, bringing Super Estrellas de la Lucha Libre into homes across the island every single weekend. This weekly TV presence was the bedrock on which the empire would be built. Capital Sports Promotions, which would later rebrand as the World Wrestling Council, or WWC, was designed to be distinctly Puerto Rican. While they brought in major American stars to create buzz, names like Randy Savage, Dory Funk Jr., and even Monsoon himself, the soul of the promotion was its homegrown talent. And at the center of it all was Carlos Colón. He wasn't just an owner working behind the scenes, he was the top star, the #1 good guy, the hero of the people. This dual role gave the company a stability few territories ever achieved. The man signing the checks was also the man bleeding in the main event. The early years were all about establishing this identity. Colón positioned himself as the island's defender, the man who would stand up to any and all foreign invaders who dared challenge Puerto Rico's honor. It was a classic wrestling methodology, but Colón and his partners gave it a unique intensity. They realized that in Puerto Rico, wrestling wasn't just a sport, it was passion, it was personal. Fans didn't just want to see their hero win, they wanted to see him suffer for that victory. They wanted to see him absorb inhuman punishment and rise from the brink of defeat, bloodied but unbowed. Carlos Colón was more than willing to oblige. He was building more than a company, he was creating a modern epic, and every drop of his blood was a word on the page. As the World Wrestling Council grew through the 70s and into the 80s, it faced a constant challenge. How do you keep people buying tickets? For Colón, the answer became brutally clear. The secret wasn't technical wrestling or cartoonish characters. The secret was to make the violence feel real, turning matches into blood feuds that felt deeply personal. It was a business model built on raw emotion, and its most profitable product was the blood of its hero, Carlos Colón. His forehead, which would collect over 70 scars, became a living testament to this philosophy. And no one was more responsible for inflicting that damage, or for building the WWC's bloody reputation, than the madman from the Sudan, Abdullah the Butcher. The feud between Carlos Colón and Abdullah the Butcher isn't just the most important rivalry in Puerto Rican wrestling history, it's one of the most violent, enduring, and profitable feuds in the history of the entire industry. For the better part of 2 decades, these two men engaged in a seemingly endless war that defined the WWC brand. Abdullah was the perfect monster, an outsider, a terrifying force of nature who didn't speak, who only destroyed. His weapon of choice wasn't some flashy wrestling hold, but a common dinner fork, which he would ruthlessly dig into the flesh of his opponents. Their matches weren't athletic contests, they were spectacles of sadism that sold out stadiums. They fought in barbed wire matches, steel cages, and wild brawls that spilled all over the arena. The story was always the same. Abdullah would brutalize Colón, leaving him a bloody mess, only for the resilient hero to fight back from the brink, fueled by thousands of screaming fans. The violence was staggering. One of the most infamous moments happened in 1986, when Abdullah threw ammonia in Colón's eyes, blinding him and forcing him to vacate the Universal title. This led to a Vengeance in the Afternoon match that drew a record-setting crowd, all hungry to see their hero get revenge. This feud was the economic engine of the WWC. When ticket sales dipped, the solution was simple: bring in Abdullah. Their rivalry was the break-in-case-of-emergency feud. Fans never got tired of it because the hatred felt real. Colón and Abdullah had a twisted chemistry, a dance of destruction that was believable because they were so committed to it. Colón would bleed, Abdullah would bleed, and the fans would go home satisfied, feeling like they'd witnessed a genuine fight for survival. This wasn't just wrestling, it was a cultural obsession. While Abdullah was his greatest rival, Colón used the same bloody formula against other legends. When the Nature Boy Ric Flair, the traveling NWA World Heavyweight Champion, came to Puerto Rico, it was treated as a massive event. Flair was the gold standard, and his matches against Colón were about more than a title. They were about respect. They were about proving that Puerto Rico's champion could stand on the world stage. Their most famous encounter happened on January 6, 1983. In Puerto Rico, the match was billed as a title unification bout to create a single, undisputed champion. Before a rabid crowd, Carlos Colón defeated Ric Flair. The stadium went insane. For that moment, their hero was the king of the world. Now, the NWA never officially recognized the title change, and Flair quietly got the belt back before leaving the island. But to the fans in Puerto Rico, it didn't matter. They saw their hero beat the best. The match, like so many others, was a bloody, hard-fought war that elevated both Colón and his promotion. Then there was Stan Hansen. If Abdullah was a sadistic monster, Hansen was a force of pure, untamed aggression. The stiff, hard-hitting Texan with his bull rope and devastating lariat was another perfect foil for Colón. Their matches weren't surgical, they were car wrecks. It was two tough guys beating each other senseless, and the crowds ate it up. These feuds, with Abdullah, Flair, and Hansen, all served the same purpose. They established Carlos Colón as the ultimate defender of his homeland and cemented the WWC's identity as the place to see the most intense, violent, and emotionally charged wrestling on the planet. Colón used his own body as the canvas, painting masterpieces of violence that built an empire, one bloody drop at a time. The World Wrestling Council was an empire built on the illusion of violence. The blood was real, the pain was immense, but it was a performance. The wrestlers were partners in a brutal dance meant to sell tickets. But in an environment so saturated with aggression, where the lines between character and reality were deliberately blurred for profit, the simulated hatred could always curdle into something real. On July 16, 1988, that risk became a horrifying reality, and the illusion was shattered forever. The Empire of Blood was now stained by a real-life tragedy that would cast a permanent shadow over its legacy. The man at the center of it all was Frank Goodish, known to the world as Bruiser Brody. Brody was, in many ways, the perfect WWC star. He was a wild, unpredictable, and legitimately terrifying brawler, an intelligent man who portrayed an unchained madman. His chain-swinging style made him a huge star and a perfect fit for the violent landscape of Puerto Rico. That July evening, he was scheduled to perform at an event in Bayamón at the Juan Ramón Lubriel Stadium. Backstage, in the cramped and humid locker room, tensions were high. Brody had a reputation for being difficult and sometimes refusing to cooperate in the ring. According to multiple accounts, he was approached by another wrestler, José Huertas González, who performed as Invader 1. Gonzalez was a WWC regular and a booker for the promotion. He asked Brody to step into the shower area to talk. What happened next, no one saw directly, but everyone in the room heard the aftermath. Two guttural screams cut through the noise. Fellow wrestler Tony Atlas ran to the shower and saw a horrific scene. Bruiser Brody was bent over, clutching his stomach, bleeding heavily from stab wounds. Standing nearby was Gonzalez, holding a knife. Chaos erupted. With the massive crowd and traffic outside, witnesses say it took paramedics nearly an hour to reach Brody. He was eventually taken to the hospital, but the damage was too severe. Frank "Bruiser" Brody Goodish died in the early hours of July 17, 1988. He was 42 years old. The aftermath was a shocking and controversial chapter in wrestling history. José González was arrested and charged with murder. However, at trial he was acquitted, with the court ruling that he had acted in self-defense. The verdict remains highly contentious. Key witnesses, mostly American wrestlers, claimed they didn't receive their subpoenas to testify until after the trial was over. The murder weapon was never found. Carlos Colón, as the co-owner of the promotion where the killing happened, was forever linked to the incident. His role in the aftermath has been debated for decades. Many American wrestlers felt betrayed, believing the promotion did little to ensure justice. The incident led to a widespread boycott of Puerto Rico by many American wrestlers, which severely damaged the WWC's ability to bring in the foreign stars that were so crucial to its business model. The death of Bruiser Brody was the moment the blood stopped being a gimmick. It was a brutal reminder of the real dangers simmering beneath the surface. For the World Wrestling Council, it was a turning point. The promotion would continue, and Colón would remain its king, but the empire would forever be haunted by the ghost of Bruiser Brody. Wrestling history is filled with incredible triumphs and sobering tragedies. The stories behind the spectacle are often more complex and compelling than what we see in the ring. If you appreciate these deep dives into the events and figures that shaped the business, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more chronicles from the Squared Circle. In the wake of the Bruiser Brody tragedy, the World Wrestling Council was wounded, but not broken. Many American stars stayed away, and the promotion's reputation was tarnished. Yet, within Puerto Rico, the WWC endured, propped up by the unwavering loyalty of its fans and the man who was both its biggest star and its foundation, Carlos Colón. To the island's wrestling fans, he was more than just a promoter tied to a scandal. He was their hero, the man who had bled for their entertainment for decades. His legendary status was built on an insane record of championship success. Over his career, Carlos Colón held the WWC Universal Heavyweight Championship, a record 26 times. This wasn't just a booking quirk, it was the core of the promotion's storytelling. Colón was the eternal hero. He'd lose the title to a monster, only to begin the heroic chase to reclaim what was his, often culminating in another bloody, cathartic victory. He was the sun around which the entire WWC universe revolved. Colón's influence stretched far beyond his own career. As a promoter, he had successfully turned a small island into a globally recognized wrestling hotbed. The WWC became a place where many wrestlers went to prove their toughness in front of one of the most passionate crowds in the world. He provided a platform for generations of local talent to become stars. His immense contributions were formally recognized in 2014 when he was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, a testament to the empire he built. But perhaps Colón's most enduring legacy is the dynasty he created. The Colón family name is now synonymous with Puerto Rican wrestling. He laid a foundation so strong that his own kids and nephew could build their careers on it. His eldest son, Carlos Jr., became a star in his own right, known to millions as Carlito. With his signature apple-spitting and Caribbean cool persona, Carlito found huge success in WWE, becoming an Intercontinental and United States champion. He was proof that the Colón lineage had global appeal. His other son, Eddie Colón, and his nephew Orlando Colón also carried the family banner into WWE, performing as the successful tag team Primo and Epico. Together, they captured WWE Tag Championship gold, further cementing the family's place in wrestling history. Their success was a direct continuation of the legacy their patriarch had forged. They were wrestling royalty, the sons of the man who built the kingdom. While their styles were often more polished and less brutal than their fathers, they were inheritors of an empire originally capitalized with blood, sweat, and sacrifice. Carlos Colón wasn't the most technical wrestler. He wasn't the biggest, the strongest, or the best on the microphone. But he had something far more valuable, a deep, almost primal understanding of his audience. He knew that in the heart of Puerto Rico, fans craved a hero who wasn't invincible, but who was unbreakable. A hero who would face down monsters, absorb their punishment, and spill his own blood to defend the honor of his home. He took this understanding and turned it into a revolutionary business model. The violence in the World Wrestling Council wasn't an accident. It was the main attraction. The blood feuds, the barbed wire, the foreign objects. They were all tools used to build an epic narrative of struggle and redemption. The rivalry with Abdullah the Butcher wasn't just a series of matches. It was a 2-decade-long story of good versus evil that kept an entire island captivated. The wars with Ric Flair and Stan Hansen weren't just title defenses. They were statements that Puerto Rican wrestling mattered. The legacy of that model is complicated. It produced some of the most emotionally charged and profitable wrestling of its era, turning the WWC into a cultural institution. But it also fostered an environment where real violence could erupt with tragic consequences, leaving an indelible stain on its history. Today, Carlos Colón is celebrated as a Hall of Famer, a patriarch, and the architect of an empire. His scarred forehead serves as a brutal roadmap of the journey, a permanent record of the price he paid to build his kingdom. He was more than a wrestler and more than a promoter. He was a pioneer who proved that sometimes the most powerful currency in wrestling isn't gold, but blood. And through that brutal currency, he built a legacy that will forever be the heart of wrestling in Puerto Rico.